This Quest v67 update is now rolling out to most headsets. Data miners are already looking towards Quest update v68, which has started to roll out on the public test channel. The public test channel is something actually anybody can opt into on Quest if you want to get a look at updates early, get to test features early, but be aware that sometimes the features that come out aren't always working correctly, so you may have to navigate those on your Quest. We'll cover the actual update in depth when the final release comes out, but basically for now, some quick previews as to what they're seeing. We're seeing some improvements like a new cursor. It looks like a lot of these updates are building on what v67 brought with theater view, with that theater view panel now being able to be moved back and forth, supporting dimming even in pass-through mode, which is pretty cool because we talked about how that wasn't an option, and that's very similar to what the Apple Vision Pro does. When you turn the crown down on it, it can dim the real world around you to help you be more immersed in what you're looking at. Playing immersive videos in the theater view panel, gamepads working in the theater view panel, and other small improvements. A pin feature that doesn't pin it to the environment, but actually allows you to pin things to your head movements so that it stays with you no matter where you're going. And the biggest potential news that Luna over on Twitter is seeing in the code is that there were some mentions of things that they thought were about face tracking, but it looks like these are actually tied to the Codec avatars we've talked about before. The avatars that look hyper realistic, adding motions like biting your lip, eyes closed, high lips, mouth open, and other different expressions, suggesting that maybe those avatars aren't as far out as they thought. Also some tutorials and settings for basically the new pencil type stylus that's coming from Logitech. We'll cover more when the final update actually drops with Meta's notes about it, because sometimes these features are just being worked on for future updates. Maybe that lip biting is for update v69 instead. But it's interesting to get a preview at it. I'll leave some links below if you're interested in joining the public test channel, how to do that in case you're someone who likes to stay ahead and kind of see what's coming. We follow BoboVR pretty closely here on the channel because we love a lot of their accessories. They've worked with us in the past by sending us the stuff at least close to launch, not always necessarily ahead of time, but so that we can bring reviews to you first on what we think. And they dropped some surprise news today, Instagram, Twitter, that they are finally replacing the G3 grips. A little bit of backstory here if you're not familiar with this. BoboVR did make a set of grips for the Quest 3 before, and we were one of the first people to receive them, and the minute I got them out and started testing them, I noticed there was a flaw where the controllers could slip right out of the grips, risking your controller, putting them in danger. Boy. And when I contacted Bobo, they immediately stopped sale of the grips. They recalled them all and they destroyed the products that were faulty. Now, this led to some time where even though they have a case with a spot for grips, there hasn't been any sort of BoboVR grips. They now have a new G3 Plus, which they told me fixes all of the issues. And although we can only see the renderings of the drawing so far, I can tell here from all the grips I've tested and looking at them, these look like they'll hang on a lot more solid. They have holes cut out for the lights for tracking, but they have a lot of silicone reaching up around the top. So being able to get these things out shouldn't be an issue. And then a few other little details we can see here from looking at them. They've got extra cutout on the silicone up above the grip button so that it shouldn't get in the way of the grip button like other ones do. They've got a hole cut out for the rear light. They're silicone. Unfortunately, from the previews, that's about all I can tell you. And after the last set of grips came out, I will definitely say I'd be a bit more cautious on jumping on a pre-order on those. And even right now, as it stands, it looks like this is only a preview of them. You can't even pre-order them yet anyways, but they're saying they are going to launch on July 24th, meaning that's when you can probably go and order them. They let me know a set is going to be on the way to me as soon as possible, so watch out for a full review of that. They're also launching their updated BD3, so that's the charging dock for the batteries. But now instead of just including a 100-watt cable, this actually includes their own 100-watt power brick, so you should be able to get the full power out of the dock at all times. I know that that does add a lot of price for accessory developers between shipping and the cost of the actual bricks, but it's nice because as we saw in testing, we were having a hard time with a couple of the cables getting a reliable high-speed charge. But something to keep in mind here, as we've mentioned, this charger, I mean, yes, it can practically fill up a single battery in an hour. Unless you are a VR arcade, you probably don't need that kind of power. If you have 3 batteries on this thing charged all the time, you're not gonna be able to drain one fast enough. You're gonna be slamming another one on there trying to charge it up. But I like that this is an option for it that does that. But even me personally, I have 2 of these docks, and one of them is on the Anchor brick that I got that doesn't charge them that fast, and I never have an issue with the batteries being low or dead or anything. So watch out. We'll have reviews coming of these as soon as we can after we get them. But it's exciting to see BoboVR still continuing to develop, push forward. They initially said for people who ordered the original grips, if they wanted to hold out, they would be replacing them with these new grips. So if you did order one, you should either get an email or they should automatically just send you this replacement. But as I get more news on that, I'll let you know that too. If you've been enjoying mixed reality gaming on the Quest 3 for a while, you may have noticed that although there's a lot of cool experiences, it does feel limiting depending on the size of your room or just your physical environment around you. And we've had to do room scale for a long time, but now it looks like we're finally going to get the option option for home scale, meaning these mixed reality experiences can actually span through your entire home. As they've been making mixed reality experiences work better through the updates, we saw that they took away the boundary if developers needed to that was getting in a lot of people's way or just immersion breaking, but they've also been improving the range of the spatial anchors and letting the developers actually access your scanned scenes from multiple rooms. Now what this is about to unlock for developers is the ability to pull together an experience that works through multiple rooms in your house. We don't have an experience yet that demonstrates what this capability is going to look like, but I imagine mixed reality experiences where you're in one room and once it gets completely overrun with zombies, you have to be pushed into another room to continue fight back in like a tower defense style, or a stealth game where you're moving from room to room using the cover of your own doorways and tables to hide from some guard that's sweeping the area. A Splinter Cell mixed reality experience like that could be really, really cool. This is early, but as we get to see what developers do with this, I think it's really exciting. I've always hoped for some sort of full home scale experiences, and this can make a big difference, especially if you already have a large living room. This might not seem that cool, but if you're working in a place that's smaller but has more hallways and rooms, this could really open up the use of your entire home in mixed reality. It seems like as the gaming world has continued to grow and change, gaming consoles are starting to do a thing where they launch multiple models of theirs, whether it's a Slim, Pro, regular, X, S, whatever. It looks like Quest is considering doing the same, with reports now coming out saying that there's going to be 2 Quest 4 variants that actually launch with the Quest 4 and planned in 2026. And then the Quest Pro 2 we've been talking about for a while would be launching in 2027. These are reports through outside sources that claim to have talked to people working on the headsets, although Wayne Mott did accurately report other Quest headsets and smart glasses, so their track record is decent with this. But according to the report, basically 2026 is the year we'll see a Quest 4 model, and there will be 2, a standard and a premium. These are codenamed Pismo Low and Pismo High, and then the Quest Pro 2, the one that we've talked about, La Jolla, wouldn't be until 2027. The report talking about those codec avatars we mentioned earlier in the news being something mainly for the Pro 2 in 2027, which is possible that they're ramping up the work on it now to prepare for something that far out, although I'd be a little surprised if some headset didn't see some iteration of it sooner. At this point, it seems like every leak and report about Meta has gotten to the point where they're pretty accurate, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that if they are launching a Quest 3S or Lite, that it could get some sort of life until 2026, although it seems like it would be a missed opportunity with how often Meta launches something to not see something new in 2025, but it's a glimpse into the near future, unlike some of the talks glimpsing into the very far future. Meta's CTO Boz decided to look forward another 7 years and give us some ideas of where he sees VR headsets going in that time. In an interview with Matthew Ball, the author of the book The Metaverse and How It Will Revolutionize Everything, Boz was asked what kind of specs are we looking forward to in the future, especially another 7 years from now. Boz talked about how we really want to get at least to that 45 ppd, that's pixels per degree in field of view, but he said really you want to get up into the 50s or 60s, which would be pushing beyond what even a lot of the top end headsets that you only end up trying at conventions are, and way above Quest 3's 25 or Quest 2's 20 ppd. I will say, as we've gotten to try some of those really high-end headsets at conventions, the problem isn't often the actual screen itself, but it's the content you're looking at it on. You might see something with 45 ppd or higher, but oftentimes you're looking at content that just then looks more pixelated. You can really notice the details of where the pixels end. It's like looking at an old video game on a modern huge TV, and you just really see where the gaming content itself has to catch up. He talked about field of view, and something that was interesting to say is honestly already at where the Quest 3 is, that's kind of the minimum, and the Quest 2 being smaller is distracting with the field of view. But interestingly, he said that vertical field of view matters more for immersion in his opinion than horizontal. This is something we haven't noticed as much because in the history of VR, the vertical field of views have been high enough for the most part that you don't really notice the edges of them until you get in a headset that has a short vertical field of view, and it's really rough. But horizontal field of view unfortunately is a long ways off. If we discussed before, human eyes see about 220 degrees, and even some of the bigger headsets might run 120, 130. He said of course the headset still has to be completely wireless. He said 120 is actually a really good frame rate, and as we talked before, that seems to be the threshold that keeps a lot of people from getting motion sick in VR, and said that the costs and the trade-off of going even higher on frame rate is probably not something that he would see in the next 7 years, but weight is going to be one of the biggest ones. Ideally seeing headsets go from the now 515 grams down to something more like 300 to 400 grams. I feel like as a tendency we always look towards the future and think we're going to be a lot further ahead, so I did feel like this was actually a pretty realistic breakdown. I mean, historically you look at like Back to the Future and the future they predicted, and that future was now multiple years ago and nothing like what they thought. And 7 years might seem like a long time time, but I remember picking up my first PSVR, really getting into the world of VR. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. And looking at 7 years in the future, we just recently got projections that the VR market itself will be nearly $100 billion industry by 2031. Talking about how VR is one of the fastest growing, most innovative areas in the global market. I'm just happy to not keep seeing articles that say VR is dead anymore. I'm curious what you think about the specs. Do you think we should be further along? Do you think we will be? It does feel like when we went wireless, we saw a big slowdown in specs because the processors have to get better and faster to keep up. But that's, of course, if we don't end up switching to cloud gaming or something like that. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. It's a lot of talk of the future and what's coming even way into the future. For you personally, what would make the big difference for you? For me, I feel like it's the comfort of the headset needs to be a big one. They need to be easier to put on and off, especially because people are still afraid to put them on because they think, oh, I'll look silly or I'll look dumb. And although the headsets are getting better and a little bit lighter sometimes, not the Apple Vision Pro by any means, they at least are getting more acceptable among society, it seems like, as time goes on. So that's exciting to me for what we can do in the future. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. We've got some big plans here for the future with the channel. We got an exciting series coming up that we got a whole bunch of headsets for. We're going to Gamescom next month all the way in Germany, which will be the first international trip the channel's ever gone on. And that's thanks to all of you out there. So thank you, and I'll see you in another reality.